Super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot, super hot.
Mother. There was a while when SUPERHOT was the talk of the internet time. People were really loving this premise of a first-person shooter where time only moves when you move. It was a game so simple yet oddly complex because yes, you technically move at a rapid pace and your only goal was to kill scrawny red guys, but you had to play it with calculation because each move literally matters and your reading of the situation is paramount to completing each level. Then it sort of just disappeared from everybody's radar. I was always fascinated to play it due to all this hype about it being innovative, which is a word to this day that still makes me shiver every time I hear it. But then I played it, enjoyed it, and then realized I felt tricked. SUPERHOT is not the game I expected it to be because underneath the surface, it has an astonishingly strange premise that manages to glue each level together despite looking like a game that's still in its early prototype stage, made as part of a game jam. Which, yes, it was. But distinctly, its lack of textures, lighting, and generally speaking, a rich aesthetic calls attention to itself. The game is finished, but it doesn't feel finished, and that's kind of the point. Aesthetically, when you start up the game, you're greeted with this 90s MS-DOS prompt as if you've accidentally just booted up your operating system's command window, and from there you immediately engage in a conversation with an anonymous user who installs a crack of the game onto your terminal. Everything feels instantaneous yet extremely displaced. There's no build-up or acknowledgement that you've purchased a licensed game, you're just dropped into it. It's kinda like when David Fincher had the DVDs for The Girl with the Dragon Tattoo look like copies and it confused a lot of people who thought their disc wasn't genuine. But what becomes clear is that this screen is almost more engaging than anything the game itself has to offer. Most reviews and promotions for it emphasize this part when navigating and exploring the terminal and responding to the system itself is just as much of a design feature. To its credit, it makes the game a lot more surprising when you keep everything a secret, but the premise that's pushed across from the very beginning is that the game literally has a mind of its own. There's something so organic about every aspect of it, from the startup to how the levels are interspliced with your conflict with the system trying to seize control of your computer, to even this 4chan-esque chat that feels creepily all too real. This is going to sound really pretentious, but I got so immersed in that conversation that I forgot that it was actually fictional. That's how natural it looks. And this comes down to a fundamental strength within the game. It makes you feel like you're physically part of it. I'm not just talking about all this phony silent protagonist so you can put yourself in their shoes stuff, I'm talking about how the game interacts directly with you as the player. There's something off about it, something that doesn't feel right. That uncomfortable displacement comes into full effect the further you progress, but it reinforces what SUPERHOT is in the context of its own story. When the system starts telling you to leave the game and you physically leave, once you return, the game actually acknowledges your return and scorns you for not listening to it. I was saying to my girlfriend it was the kind of game that you would play in short bursts as opposed to one sitting because despite how short it is, I always felt this urge to put it down even if I did want to keep playing. In a positive sense, the game has a weird way of pulling me out of it, and it's down to how jarring completing each level feels. The perpetual repetition of SUPERHOT gets to a point where I question why exactly I'm doing any of this, or whether there's an endgame to it. Which there's not. Once you finish, the system entices you to continue into endless mode and basically play forever. The game itself has virtually no purpose, or at least in theory it doesn't. And this is something all the users within the chat keep questioning. Is this a simulation? What's our goal? Are we killing real people? Or is this a visual metaphor for hacking? And how does the system respond? Maybe. The entire point of the system, which I should clarify is what keeps taking control of the game, is to put you through some twistedly comedic existential crisis. For example, if you find a secret terminal, you ask the question, why do my enemies shatter when I kill them? And the system responds, why do you assume they are enemies? Yeah, that's enough gaming for me. Like I said, I always felt the need to take a breather despite the narrative being a somewhat satirical take on video game addiction and technological obsession. In fact, one of the developers subtly implied that the incomplete, seemingly off-putting nature of the game was there to challenge your perception and purpose for playing it. It doesn't want me to keep playing, but then it does, and while that might sound frustrating, the thing about meta-narratives is that they need self-contradictions in order to break the consistency of the illusion and make you fully aware of the structure behind everything. The illusion wants you to do one thing, which is to play the game, but the context of that illusion wants you to do another thing, which is to assess your role within the game and what the game is doing to you right now. Which is mind-fucking me. This is exactly where it draws from the Matrix and the Truman Show's evil demon concept, the philosophical argument that there is a power or force or entity or something that deceives us with illusions that affect our abilities and judgment, which in this case, the world isn't really the world, it's the false illusion of normality to hide the actuality. That's why contradictions are prevalent in the story, a bit like the glitches in the Matrix. They call direct attention to themselves that it's hard to look past it and subconsciously confuse the player. In both films, these characters are metaphorically disillusioned by society. There's a cynicism about the world not feeling as harmonious as we want it to be, and in reality, we find our own means of escapism in many shapes and forms, such as video games. There is a thrill that makes us keep coming back to these things, and this is something that SUPERHOT's users experience. In the game, they treat it like it's this new drug on the market, and there's this hypnotic feeling they get from playing it. But it calls into question the meaning of choice. When the game tells you to stop playing, what it's really doing is tricking you into breaking its own rules because you subconsciously, or rather stubbornly, ignore its warnings and keep playing, in which the game rebukes you for being dominated by your own pride rather than what you truly want. And that's because the game wants you to call its own bluff, so that you show willingness to follow. Put it this way, you have free will to do whatever you want, but your choice is to keep doing the one thing that's trying to take control away from you. The hacking group chat I told you about at the start of the video has greater clarity when you find all the hidden terminals throughout the game. Suddenly what came off as a very real and organic forum has a manipulative purpose which the system breaks down accordingly. They scan each active user for the potential of addiction, and one example sees a user get sent an outdated version of the program so that the system can apply low dosages of signal and test his dedication. In theory, technology is the drug that we're all consumed by, but more so, it's not down to the power of such artificiality. It's down to our pure human weakness to have the self-control to stop. Like when I personally felt the need to stop because I'm a lightweight. With SUPERHOT, once you press start, everything that precedes is an encompassing illusion that immediately intoxicates you into playing and blanks out all mention of reality. This game does not work on consoles. It's narratively not built for it, and I'm not saying it because of the whole superior graphics, PC Master Race bollocks. I'm saying it because the illusion only works if you feel physically and emotionally attached to the concept that you are dependent on your computer. In fact, I haven't played this on VR, which is understandably a very different game from the PC version, but given its VR within the story, I feel this is the first game to narratively challenge the usage of virtual reality because it's further solidified by the fact that you are literally connected and consumed by a device. I mean, I think if I played this game in VR, it would scare the shit out of me because my brain works a million miles a minute and my anxiety is usually through the roof, so this scene would blow my mind. No pun intended. On a point of clarity, this isn't anything groundbreaking. You've seen these narrative themes in dozens of games before, but what's so immensely striking about SUPERHOT is that everything you need to know about the game's world is displayed entirely on a command prompt. This screen speaks louder than any traditional imagery you can display. It sets a very isolated, even dystopian atmosphere. It's a loner experience, one in which you're in the dark, surrounded by just the intense glow of your monitor at 2 in the morning whilst a bit tipsy after an excruciatingly long day, digging deep into the ominous depths of the internet, engaging with anonymous users with no concern for your safety or what you might find. That's not a true story. It captures this wandering, mindless nature that we all have when we're bored and just surfing the web with absolutely no purpose. SUPERHOT is a game that manifests this abstract boredom or tired high, which is reinforced by this void of repetitive text sounds and these random features like the carpet randomizer, and even the strangely satisfying and mesmerizing graphics. Narratively, the system projects this idea that SUPERHOT is this unique, revolutionary, game-changing software, when really, at the end of the day, regardless of how many times it sings its own praises and tries to get you to submit to its power, SUPERHOT, in the context of its story, exemplifies what every computer junkie like you and I simply call a cheap thrill. Get him out of here. Ugh. By the way, and if you're on Patreon, or you want to help me make more videos, support me on Patreon, all that stuff. Yeah, all that stuff. See you next week.